guys, it's Priscilla and welcome back. I hope you had a great, safe New Year. So I recently went to Salem about 2 or 3 months ago and had the craziest experience there. And by crazy, I mean sad, because I was not expecting the sadness that came with the tours that we took and the museums that we went to go visit. It was a very sad experience, but a very educated experience on the innocent people who were accused of the Salem Witch Trials. And for today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about one of the victims who was the very first to be accused in the Salem Witch Trials, and her name is Tituba. Now, Tituba was a slave to Samuel Parris, and Samuel Parris was a pagan minister in Salem. Samuel Parris was married to Elizabeth Eldridge Parris, and they had 3 children. One named Elizabeth, also known as Betty, and the other one was named Susan and Thomas. Now, they also had a niece living with them at the time, and her name was Abigail Williams. Betty Parris and Abigail Williams would be the first accusers to Tituba, and would soon create a spark throughout the nation of this crazy witch hunt hysteria. Now, Tituba was a slave to Samuel Parris, and she also had a husband named John. Now, one thing I want to say about Tituba is that there are rumors that she actually came from Barbados. There are other arguments that she was from Central America, and then there are others that state that she was African American. Tituba would go on to raise Parris's 3 children and niece Abigail Williams. Tituba would be one of the first persons to be accused of witchcraft in Salem. Now, when we took a trip to Salem, again, we were told that Tituba would gather the kids in a circle and just tell stories about her life back at home. But little did she know that one of those nights she would reveal something very crucial that would be used against her, and that was her being able to tell the fortune of these 2 young women by breaking an egg into a glass of water and looking at the shapes, and with those shapes she would be able to tell the kind of man that they would marry. Now, this incident would be used against her by her 2 accusers, Abigail and Betty, and this would cost the lives of 20 innocent people. So in 1692, the village of Salem would have a lot of young girls having fits and convulsions, and some even complaining of hallucination and visions. And one of the very first people to have this was Betty Parris, and was soon followed by her cousin Abigail Williams. Now, Samuel did not know what was going on, so he eventually called a doctor, Dr. William Griggs, who would come and look at the children and try to figure out what was going on. And what the doctor did not know then was that the girls were suffering from what was called erotism, which is a condition caused by ergot, that is a type of fungus that grows on rye. Now, because they were unaware of why the girls were acting the way that they were and what was causing this, most doctors would leave this uncaused condition to a supernatural cause. So Dr. William Griggs then told Samuel Parris that the children were bewitched. Now, soon after, Mary Sibley would inform Tituba that if she wanted to know who was bewitching the children, all she would have to do was bake a cake using the girls' urine. What? They would have to use the girls' urine and bake a cake and then feed it to their dog, who would apparently be able to speak the name of the person who was bewitching the girls. Now, they baked the cake with the girls' urine and they fed it to their dog and waited for the dog to speak to them. And this is when they heard the dog bark. And when the dog barked, everybody swore that they heard Tituba's name. Now, I just want to inform you that Tituba was an easy scapegoat to blame someone for the girls being bewitched. The tour guide also had mentioned that people then would determine the pureness of your soul by the color of your skin. So the darker you were, the less pure you were. And Tituba, being of a darker skin color, they assumed that her soul was impure, and therefore she was the one bewitching the children. Soon after, one of the girls would come forward and tell Samuel that Tituba actually was telling their fortune on who that they would marry. That is when Samuel Perez would beat Tituba into a confession to confess that she was the one to bewitch the children. Unfortunately, again, Tituba would be the scapegoat for the erratic behavior that was happening throughout the village of Salem at this point. At this point, many other girls were having the same symptoms, doing crazy things, barking like dogs, and having crazy hallucinations and all of these other crazy hysterias that you would hear. In March of 1692, Tituba would be taken in to confess of witchcraft, in which she first initially denied, but then later confessed her involvement of witchcraft. Tituba would go on to explain a book she saw with the names of all the people who were practicing witchcraft. And when the court asked her for the names of the book, two names came to mind for Tituba, and that was Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne. Sarah Good was an ill woman who was also known as a beggar in Salem, and Sarah Osborne was someone who was always at odds with the Perez family. Once the names were provided, Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne would all stand trial for the very first Salem Witch Trials, where they were asked to answer the charges against them. Although Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne denied the charges of being involved in witchcraft, Tituba soon realized that if she also denied the charges of witchcraft, she could probably be the only one that would be convicted, and the possibility that Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne would be set free. So instead of denying the charges of practicing witchcraft, Tituba went into full detail about the devil himself, providing a detailed and convincing story where she talked about black dogs, black cats, hogs, pigs, rats, and people riding sticks to different places. This was the first known accusation of flying witches. At this point, Tituba had the court fascinated by the story that she painted of the devil. The court never assumed that a slave like Tituba could ever put together such a captivating story. She would go on to turn against Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, and led the court to condemn them both, in taking Tituba's story as factual evidence, even though it costed two innocent people's lives. And Tituba realized at this point that she was going to be spared her life by helping and agreeing to capturing others in Salem. But then this meant providing innocent names she had no idea of. She was constantly pushed by the court to provide the names that she saw in the devil's book. But in this moment, she stated that she was not allowed to see the rest of the names in the book. And the more that they pressured her, she would continue to feed them false information, even telling them that she still sensed a lot of evil in Salem. It wasn't Tituba's intentions that her false confessions to save herself would lead to the capture, torture, and imprisonment of 150 people. But the authorities were anxious. They were anxious to eliminate the witches that Tituba had spoken about, and in the process executed 20 innocent people that were suspected to be written in the devil's book. When the court had asked her to identify those who were captured, she adamantly proceeded to tell them that she had not yet seen the devil's book and that he was keeping it away from her. And her sight was conveniently taken away to make it to where she was unable to conveniently not identify the remaining witches. Tituba stayed in jail until this hysteria was over, but the jail life for those who were accused of being witches and practicing witchcraft was really bad. The conditions were not great, so if they wanted food, if they wanted more blankets, if they needed more clean linen, they would have to pay for all of those things. So after being in jail in 8 months and after the hysteria was over, Tituba was released from jail but owed £7. And because she was a slave, Samuel Perez had to pay for her bill. He had stated he did not want to pay for her bill because she was the reason for the cause of the whole hysteria, which is insane because his daughter and his niece were the ones who accused Tituba for practicing witchcraft. So after a year of Tituba being in jail, someone had paid for her bill. She was finally let out of jail and she was a slave to another family. So this whole witch hunt hysteria was crazy because people of another race or people of lower class are always targeted first at being witches. Of course, now today people believe that Tituba was an innocent person and the people that were executed were victims of this crazy hysteria that went on in the 1600s in Salem. But because Tituba confessed that she was a witch, people really believed that witches did exist. One of the things that I do want to mention that during the time when we were in Salem, our tour guide mentioned that you could be accused of practicing witchcraft just if your neighbor doesn't like you and wants your land. So a lot of innocent people were imprisoned, tortured, and executed, and she saved her own life. But this doesn't discount the fact that this whole hysteria took the lives of so many innocent people. A lot of people may think that Tituba was the actual blame and cause for the losing the lives of a lot of people. I feel like the blame can't all be put on her because she, in the first place, was accused by Samuel Parris's daughter Betty and his niece Abigail Williams, who also were a huge part of the reason that this all started. It took executing innocent people for the town of Salem to finally realize that witches did not exist. And I feel like in this story, Tituba taught the world a lesson that people only hear what they want to hear. It's just a very sad story, and it's sad that she was put in this position to just save her own life, but at the cost of other people's lives as well too. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if I missed on any information. Leave a comment down below. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!